right, hello everybody. This is our final session of the day. So I'd like to welcome Dana Todd, and I'm going to say this correctly this time, at Balodana.
Absolutely.
Did I get
Perfect.
it?
Yeah, you
Perfect.
got it. You're
All right,
practically
fantastic.
Italian.
Yeah. Everybody thinks I am. I'm not. So interestingly enough,
It's the swarthy beard.
I think that's what it is. Yeah, I'm actually
And a
half
snazzy
Mexican.
dresser. You're a snazzy dresser
Thank you
too. So
very
you should
much.
totally take that as a compliment.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we're not on stage this time, but I figure I shouldn't sacrifice that. This is a apparel sourcing show after all. So
Exactly.
but okay, so your presentation is about one of the most important questions in fashion. What customers want. They want it custom and they want it now, which seems to be the prevailing trend as time goes on. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. So very excited to hear what you have to say about it. I just want to remind all of our attendees that we do have a chat function on here. So if there's any questions you have, please post them there and we will address them at the very end of the presentation and for the Q&A. And Dana has included her contact information here. So if anybody would like to reach out to her website and her email afterwards for any additional questions, please feel free.
I think I only put that in the panel side. Let me throw that out.
Yeah, make sure you
public view.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, and once you've done that, the virtual floor is yours, as they say. I hope to eventually meet you in person one day.
That would be really nice. I would look forward to that.
All right.
So hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out to the virtual show. I really wish that we could be doing this in person because I'm like a fabric lover, so the fact that I can't be out there just touching things kills me. But I've been busy doing some research and lots of research, and I'm excited to tell you about it. So I'm going to, without further ado, go ahead and share my screen and tell you a little bit about what we found. Let me go live here. So, pandemic and all of that, we didn't really have a fun year this year, as a lot of people in fashion were struggling. So we said, well, hey, now that we've got a little bandwidth, why don't we do some of the research that we've been thinking about for a while? And my company, Balodana, just to give you a little background, I come from the tech industry, not the fashion industry. So I jumped into fashion a few years ago, although I've loved fashion forever and ever. My background is actually tech, hard tech. So I've been building digital experiences for people and doing digital marketing and all things tech since the 90s, I guess, a long time. And when I started looking at this concept of custom-made fashion and all its various iterations, I found that this whole industry is really in a very much of a state of flux right now. And it very much needed somebody to come in and create a much more cohesive digital experience there. So as part of that, when I'm looking into the business model, I did some early research back in 2018, which led me to believe that this was a pretty significant market waiting to happen. So fast forward a couple of years, and boom, this dropped in April of this year. And I don't know how many of you saw this, but Deloitte put out basically a revision of their apparel trends 2025. And they had originally put custom and customizable, like really customized fashion, as ultimately carrying a 30% market share. They accelerated that so that they're thinking within the next 10 years, it's going to capture 30% of all the clothing, which is really shocking. So when you start doing the numbers, you think about the apparel industry worldwide is estimated between $4 and $6 trillion. So if custom is $2 trillion, what's standing between us and that $2 trillion? So we really wanted to understand this and understand consumer behaviors, like what's the perception right now about custom? Do we really understand this? And is the market ready to deliver this level of demand? And so as part of an overall white paper that we were doing where we interviewed a number of industry partners, we also did some primary research. And so that's what I'm going to share with you today. We do have our white paper coming out later this week. If you want to email me, I'll be happy to send you a copy of that when we release it to the wild. But without further ado, let's just jump right in. So methodology, those of you who are data geeks, we started with 600 men and women across America at a broad sweep across all 50 states. Age ranges from 18 to 55, and we scrubbed that down to about, depending on the question, between 400 and 500 respondents. So we feel pretty strong about these numbers, and we've double checked them and triple checked them. And we're really surprised, I think, in a couple of cases, as you might be too. So this should not be a surprise, though. Anybody who's in retail will tell you that the sizing situation is frustrating. So when we back in 2018, when we did this first, we asked, it was only for women. We asked women if they had any level of frustration at all with size guides, like navigating them. And we ended up with 75% of women saying that they were frustrated by size guides. So we asked it a little bit differently this way, and we looked at men and women both. And what we asked them was, if you're going shopping for pants, how many sizes do you typically find yourself buying? This is a common dilemma, particularly for women. And as you can see, the numbers bear that out. Nearly half of men, and again, 75, this actually was 76% of women, wear at least 2 different sizes in the same garment. So what that does is leads to frustration and concerns about sizing guides. It's very inconsistent. You really don't even know what standard size you wear. So this is just pants. If you go into tops and dresses that have different kinds of measurements on them, you get even more frustration. Lingerie, I can tell you, there's not a woman on the planet right now who's happy with how things fit her. So this is like the main reason why custom is one of the best choice, right? Because ostensibly it fits you and you don't have to worry about sizes because everything is literally size you. What we did find, and this is awesome, is that people want to try custom. Yay, right? Yay for that. So that those of you who are out there, who are either in the industry or thinking about getting into the industry, what we found is that a pretty overwhelming number of people, men and women, did want to try it. So interesting, about 49% of women said they were interested and planning. So a combination of those, either interested and or planning. So that's pretty significant. That's about half there. And they indexed higher than men for interest. But flip side of that, converse, more men actually have already had an experience with custom. So more men have custom. 31% of men said that they had already bought custom, but women were more interested. So there is a little pent-up demand there among women to try out custom-made clothing. And as we mentioned, it is really all about the fit. When we ask them, what do you think are the benefits? Why would you like customized clothing, or why do you like custom clothing? And not surprisingly, fit was number one. Unique and quality, confidence, all of those things that you would expect. One thing I want to call your attention to here is the sustainable and ethical. So 17% of our respondents said that they appreciated the sustainability aspects of it. So this is one of the things that I feel is like an overlooked opportunity for people in the custom industry and the on-demand manufacturing, is to really drive home this sustainable and ethical components of this, because there's not that many people who actually even have the awareness. If you look out there, like who's talking about sustainability, the bulk of the conversation have to do with fabrics, right? This is a fabric show, so a textile show, we're talking a lot about textiles, but the production methods themselves obviously have a lot to do with that as well. And particularly when you get into the ethics and any of the chemicals and things like that, we're really looking at this being as close to zero waste as possible. So if there's an overlooked opportunity for the industry to really drive home a new talking point, it's all about custom being equated to frankly being the most sustainable way for you to buy a new garment. So short of renting it or getting it from a thrift store, new clothing that isn't made out of, was it cactus skin in that last one? That was pretty interesting. Cactus leather. There's a lot of good reasons here why people enjoy having custom made clothes. It is highly valued. So when I looked at this, I was very excited. Because what this means for those of you who are out there having your margins squeezed like crazy is that there is a higher perceived value of custom made clothing. So the way we expressed this to our respondents, we actually put a sliding scale up for them. We said, if you look at buying a garment and you compare it to that same garment in mass manufactured, how much more do you value the custom made article versus the mass manufactured? And as you can see, more than half of them were very much on the upside. Actually, 3/4 of them measured it at 50% or higher. when we dug into the numbers a little bit by gender, women actually had a higher perceived value. Most of the bulk of their responses were in the over 50% category. So there's definitely a high valuation there. So yay for that, right? That means that we have not price protection per se, but certainly more so than a lot of traditional retail. Now, the bad news. Everything that you would expect, all the things that create barriers in adoption. And some of them are, I think, probably justified. Some of them are old thinking. So expensive. Now that we have a lot of new players who are bringing down the price of it, that's certainly addressable, particularly when you start adding in automation. Kind of those bottom two, when you add them together, they sort of mean the same things, right? This is only for fancy people, for fancy times and fancy clothing. So, you know, almost 40% there. It's a pretty big chunk of them. That is very much wrong, because now you can buy custom made anything. You can buy custom socks, for God's sake, right? So the opening up of the definition of custom, I think, is another overlooked opportunity for us as well. The takes too long part, I'm going to dig into that a little bit later and show you what their expectations are. Complicated, inconvenient, you can't touch it, I might mess up the measurements. All of these things are hopefully addressable as we accelerate a lot of these automation touch points and giving people a little bit more close attachment to the process itself. So slow fashion is subjective. So remember we said that they thought it takes too long. Well, they're actually a little bit more patient with fashion, with custom-made fashion than you might expect. So unlike an Amazon expectation where it's like tomorrow, there is an expectation for custom that is going to take between a week and a month. So you can see that most people would really prefer to get to them to their doorstep within 3 weeks. That is achievable for a lot of garments, for a lot of producers, but not every garment and every producer right now, particularly when you get into like bespoke suits and things like that require a lot more construction, back and forth communication, et cetera. But for a lot of these types of like custom casual, very achievable to get these. Now, particularly when we start moving into a local production model. So if you start having micro factories closer to the destination, any of the on-demand factories putting this together, this is something that is probably going to see massive acceleration in the next few years as these folks get connected and start really seeing traction from the market. So the top categories. So those of you who are out there in the custom clothing, if you're wondering what to bother designing this year, the things that had, and we have a whole list of these, but the things that had the most appeal in both genders were pants, formal wear, tops and shirts, and dresses. Believe it or not, by the way, we did have a fair number of men say that they would look at buying dresses. So we think those might have been gifts, or they might have been men who just like dresses. But yeah, so over 50% of people were looking for custom made pants. I personally believe that's because pants are one of the hardest things to fit, particularly for American bodies. We're just a little bit bigger, a little bit lumpier, and a lot of the pants just aren't really working for us. Formal wear, as we saw, was just more of an easy adoption. They're already assuming that, yes, formal wear could be custom, and it's about the same price point. Having it custom versus buying it off the rack. And if it's for a special occasion, people don't mind indulging themselves or spending a little bit more. Tops and shirts, I think, is a very overlooked opportunity here. This is where most men have the familiarity. There's a lot of custom made shirt offerings out there from companies like Indochino, Custom Tailors, M. Taylor, you name it. There's who's the other one? Bonobos has some, Proper Cloth. There's just tons of men's brands that are addressing the tops and shirts space, but there are fewer for women that aren't just dressy blouses. So I'd like to see a lot more casual tops out of that, because those could really be produced in a much more sustainable and ethical way. And they are probably the thing that most people like to buy the most. And then dresses, of course, for either for work or for play, dresses continue to be just something women want and buy and will continue to buy. So looking at COVID, now this is one of the things that we saw the biggest impacts this year to, well, obviously all retail, but in custom in particular. And mostly because well, nobody's going to parties, nobody's going to weddings, nobody's wearing pants. They're certainly not going out and buying custom-made suits right now, or a lot of the categories that tend to be the meat and potatoes of this industry. So we wanted to understand in general what's going on with people. So by the way, this survey was taken in September. So we figured at this point we should have, because I know there's a lot of research done earlier in the year to understand how people's shopping habits were changing. And there was a lot of predictions. But now I think 6 months in, I think I feel a lot more confident with people being able to project their own shopping habits. So jumping in, 54% of people, excuse me, 54, the combined, I'm going to say this right, the combined group said that 54% of their total clothes shopping will be done online in the next 12 months. So that moved the needle, as you can see by these peaky things here. The pink stacks were what it was pre-pandemic, and then moving to the green stacks, that's where everybody's going to be going. So you see there's even the people who did basically like no shopping before are definitely adopting. So a lot of our folks who are laggers on the technology. And you see most people before were doing a minimal amount of their shopping online. And now you can see the largest number in there is that 50 to 75% space. So those of you who have not increased your investment in your online experience absolutely should, because it's important that if you're going to engage with people digitally, that it's got to be a better experience for them. Certainly, it's got to be as convenient as Amazon, but we did some other qualitative kind of discovery around what people's expectations were, and I'll share with that in a minute. But there are areas that custom providers can play that give a completely different experience than a typical Amazon. So when we ask people, how has COVID changed your shopping? So we asked this as an open-ended question, and it was fascinating to look at all the answers. I will say that there weren't that many people who said it didn't affect them in any way, but there were some. The majority of people were saying that they had definitely felt an impact. A lot of them expressed specific concerns about people touching them or being in a crowded space, very, very virus specific. Others just said they stopped shopping altogether. They're just like, I haven't bought anything. So I'm afraid to go, afraid it's not going to fit me. I'm afraid to go to the store. And so I just didn't buy. So there's this compression that happened to the American shopping dollar. It has not gone certainly into apparel. It's gone maybe to toilet paper and cleaning supplies. But there's, again, perhaps pent-up demand that will come in next year. The minute people really do feel more comfortable, they're going to have some fashion needs. And obviously they will have gained a little bit of weight being in lockdown. So it was really fascinating hearing people expressing, you know, what they were feeling and how their shopping habits pertaining specifically to clothing had changed in the last 6 months. So now this is the kind of the flip side of that is when we ask them specific to getting measured in a physical store, as you can see, more than half of them said that they would feel comfortable, either comfortable or extremely comfortable. So there really is, it's you know, it's kind of a split there. People who are either undecided or very, I slice that right in the middle. It's kind of a 50-50 right now. So they're certainly feeling a lot better about being in small group situations like this. If you think about getting measured, it's, you know, one-on-one, it's very controllable. So I think anything that custom providers can do, if they do still want to make this in-person experience part of their offering, then they can really help customers adopt this more by stating their private, you know, their sanitation policy and all of that. The more, I think, guidelines that you put out there for people, the safer they feel coming into any kind of space and having you get within their 6-foot zone. So now, flip side of that would be body scanning, right? So if you don't want to go in-house, you know, if you don't want somebody to touch you, what about technology? Will you adopt technology? Because we've watched this body scanning thing. Now, I've been watching this for like a decade, actually longer, because virtual avatars have been around, frankly, since the early 2000s, and they just have never really gained a whole lot of traction. There is a belief, and our data shows that there may be some serious support for that belief, that people will be more likely to adopt this technology now because of pandemic, right? Because now they're like, well, hey, let's go ahead and try out this app, or let's go to a body scanning machine. If it'll get me something that'll fit, then I'd like that. And then additionally, 85% of these people said that they'd like to have a virtual avatar of themselves when shopping online. So again, the desire is there, absolutely. But then we asked them if they hadn't, we asked those people who said, no, I definitely wouldn't want to do it. We asked them why not. And you can see just a few of their answers here. They range from just don't trust it. I think it's going to mess up anyway, to privacy concerns, to people not wanting other, strangers to see their data. It just there's a lot of like, ixnay, no, definitely not. So hopefully over time there will be less of that, particularly if the industry addresses those privacy concerns. If there's an immediate value shown for going through the process, like I scan, then I'm immediately getting some kind of reward for that. So then that trade-off, like you get in any other privacy situation, has to be there. So the fantasy, then we asked, this was a fun one, another one of our open-ended questions. We said, well, you know what, okay, if you had the ultimate custom shopping experience, fantasy or reality, right? Just tell us, how would you like this? Well, how would that go for you? And it was interesting. Some people took a lot of time and really detailed this out. So you can see like this one person, the ultimate experience would be able to put on a virtual reality headset and suddenly being completely immersed into a simulated VR world where I can enter a specific clothing shop, browse their virtual items, which are physically available in the store's real life inventory, and be able to go through the entire custom fitting process with the aid, this is important, with the aid of a professional tailor, this whole experience being able to correspond with my real life purchase. So over and over, we saw this thread of people wanting to have kind of an expert help them. They wanted that hands-on or maybe hands-off, but certainly having an interjection of expertise, someone who understands how body shapes are, someone who can help them pick through colors and trends, help them invest wisely with a custom dollar, help them understand what's going to be look the best for them, feel the best for them, and be more appropriate to their lifestyle. So people are definitely looking for support and gurus and information here. So back to that whole speed and cost thing, the value that people see in custom is not transactional, right? So it's really selling more of a service than it is just a product. So I think it's important that all of us, like we're an online retailer, we're online only, and so we work really hard to make sure that people feel very supported. We do Zoom calls with them. Hell, we even do a Zoom happy hour. If you want to bring some wine, we'll do a virtual trunk show. But those types of add-ons, those service add-ons are incredibly important, I think, to get that full adoption, because there is still, particularly for women, that's the area that we focus the most. For women, there's still a great deal of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. They're concerned about getting their measurements wrong. They're concerned about getting their measurements in the first place and understanding what their metrics are. They're concerned about not being able to touch and feel. So there's a lot of things that you have to overcome. And the only way really to do that is this with a very connected service model. So we have a whole lot more in our white paper, including a lot of big pictures about how do we accomplish all this, right? So what's the technology that's stepping forward to take this on? And what is the, how many people are moving into this? What's the competitions look like as well? So please, by all means, write to me. You can write to me personally, dana.todd@balodana.com, or inquiries@balodana.com, and we will send that out. We should have that live in publication later this week. Hot off the press. You guys are the first to see it. So without further ado, do we have any questions? Okay. Are y'all out there? I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. I zoomed through my stuff. I got done really fast, Jason. I didn't use my whole hour here. Oh, I think he's off doing something else. Let me check the chat over here. Anybody have questions? Well, I'm not seeing any questions coming in. So
My apologies. 1 second. I had a little technical issue for a second.
no worries. No worries.
It's amazing how like the little dialogue screen disappears sometimes on Zoom. It's very frustrating.
Totally. Well, I know you have other things to do as well. So I zoomed through all my data. We got done a little faster, I think, than we expected. I'm a fast talker.
Oh, that's all right. It's better than going over on time. I hate it when I have to interrupt somebody. Like, sorry, we're out of time. We got to go. You know, we have a question that came in here. Let's see. Do you think? Here we go. Do you think that men's custom mostly comes from dress suits? If so, seems like, wait, that could fall. Oh, okay. So the question is, it seems when it comes to menswear, custom generally means custom suiting. If so, is that a product category that's likely, is it likely to extend to other product categories? What other apparel products come to mind in the menswear? Because I think custom is very much more limited when it comes to menswear than just women's wear, or overall in general, just the options that are available.
It is and it isn't, because to be honest, again, back to the conversation I was having about what I call custom casual. So the people in the space that have made the most ripples here are Indochino, M. Taylor, Proper Cloth, Bonobos. They are doing literally chinos, right? And shirts, just regular sports shirts. So it's a much more casual custom environment. So for men, I mean, obviously we've seen the student category just decline. No one is really, it may be a trend, and definitely I see a lot more young dandies, certainly more than I ever would have expected. And that's lovely to see that young men are dressing up and looking swell after what, a decade now of sitting around in our yoga pants. So no, it's not going away. Suits will probably never go away. They may evolve, but the real opportunity there is what I'll call custom casual. So in the women's wear space, we see this in fitted dresses, in casual blazers, in shirts and pants and jumpsuits and all kinds of things. So you're right, men's is a little bit more limited, but it really doesn't have to be, because you've got athleisure, right? So we've been in discussions with a company that does custom athletic wear. So I think there's a huge market there for custom athletic wear. When you think about it, people who are very muscular or have like you don't have to be a beanpole to be an athlete, right? And there are many, many people out there who are spending $120 on a pair of Lululemon leggings when they could get the exact same thing in a more sustainable fabric in a custom made option. So there really is a lot of substitution that can happen there. So that was why one of the things that we asked, like, what are your top categories? And we had those 4 things. We asked people basically, what would you be substituting? So if you look at those 4 categories of substitution, it was, the number 1 thing was pants, just pants, right? So like, everybody go make some custom pants, because that is the thing that 50% of the people said, I will happily buy my pants custom from now on. All we have to do is rise to meet them, right?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I think it's interesting to notice consumer spending and shopping patterns. You start noticing that people are tribal when it comes to brands, mostly based on fit versus aesthetic. I mean, aesthetic is certainly important, but and especially with technology, Indochino is a great example of something that's driving that. They figure it out from a supply chain perspective how to do the custom model at an affordable price.
Absolutely.
So, and I think as time goes on, you're going to see that become more, and things like Stitch Fix and all these other brands that are popping up. They have a very, very innovative supply chain and business model that allows them to do this stuff in a cost-effective way.
Yeah, I will say, so Stitch Fix, by the way, everybody asks me like, oh, like Stitch Fix, we might talk to them about custom clothing. They're misnamed because there are no stitching. There's nothing's custom about what they do, but what they did do, is apply an algorithm and be able to get that feedback loop
Right,
going with their
Mhm.
providers. So they've been able to essentially discern sizing out of massive
Right.
inventory, doing matching. And it took them about 5 years to train that algorithm to really start doing well. And the feedback I've heard anecdotally from friends, people that I know who use the service, is that the fit is getting better and better. And it took
Yeah.
Indochino and Bonobos both 10 years to be able to get those metrics. So this isn't going to be overnight, but the good thing is a lot of that groundwork has been laid by these folks, right? So
Right.
we've got on-demand manufacturers here in the United States that can do batches of one. So we
Mhm.
are that small lot is getting smaller, and yeah, there's a lot of interesting
Yeah.
levels around that, I think.
It's funny. It's funny when I was in fashion school. I think it was 8 years ago already.
Oh,
We, you know,
I'm your
you have
child.
to create. Yeah, yeah, I know, right? You have to create, your business plan and all this. And one of our ideas was to create an online store that pulled your metrics from different retailers that fit you similarly, and then applied that. This is back before any of this stuff was really popular, so it's just kind of interesting to see, like, but it's so much work that went into it. Like you just said, it took years and years of development to figure it out. But it's
Yeah.
very exciting to see what they have. So we do have some other questions coming in.
Okay.
Do you have tips or resources? Custom clothing.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that question?
Sorry, my AirPod just cut out. Do you have tips or resources on how to market custom clothing? From Jasmine.
Oh, Jasmine, I'm writing it. No, just kidding. This is a challenge. I'll tell you. I guess I've done marketing now for a long time in a lot of different categories, and I'll tell you, custom made clothing is one of the more challenging things to market, because while there's this huge demand, as I mentioned, that the women really do want this, they really are interested in it. There's a lot of fear and uncertainty there in doing something new in America, by the way. So outside the US, by the way, this is de rigueur. Like it's so much easier to sell custom made clothing in a culture that already has it. So you go to India, you go to most Asian countries, you have plenty of options. This is not like fantasy land, right? There's not the same level of emotion that people have around it as they do in America. And by the way, women have more emotion around the purchase than men do. So by and large, when men go to get custom made clothes, they're just kind of like, all right, need shirts, want them to fit, get shirts. It's very transactional, right? It's just, does it fit? What color is it? And oh, that's a nice pattern. There's not that same level of expectation, where women will typically have a lot more fantasy around it. This is going to solve everything. I'm going to look like Cinderella. This is going to, there's a great deal of expectation there. So the more education you can do around it to help women, feel more confident with the process, a lot more hands-on if you can arrange, to be honest, as old-fashioned as it is, we've found the most success having trunk shows or going out to markets where people can actually touch and feel, so that they can see that there is a different level of quality. What brings them in, yes, fit, but what brings them in is the quality that they're not getting in our traditional supply chain. Especially when they can get it, really made from a high quality provider. There are all of our folks we vet, so we've seen their work. We know they're going to provide a really good quality. But so yeah, it's always delightful for me when women come up and touch the racks and they're like, oh my God, this is custom and that price. So we're really trying to help them understand that there's more to it than just, I needed something for a fancy occasion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a good example, I think you mentioned earlier, was Lulu. As far as noticing the tactile difference in quality, is Lululemon for activewear. Like you touch their fabrics, and the fit's good too, but it's just like, wow, you can really feel the difference. I think that's what makes them such a successful activewear brand.
True. Although I'll sell you some leggings, dude, that you will love.
I am waiting for men's leggings to be accepted widely, because we get stretch denim. That's about as far as we've gotten with the skinny jeans, but it looks very comfortable. So anyway, next question. I am starting a tailor subscription model for the everyday businessman and woman. Do you think tailor-made clothing is the number one? Do you think tailor
made clothing is the #1 reason for custom or aesthetic / uniqueness.
I think depends on
Do
the
you understand that?
customer.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah. So uniqueness, as you saw in our data, was real high up there. Let me go back and check this. So confidence and quality were even in benefits. 30% of the people said that that was what they liked about custom. Uniqueness was a little bit higher than that at 34%. So I do think that people, and I hear this actually in the younger generations too, are actually way more aware of quality than you ever would have imagined. Now their budgets, are a little bit smaller, but they're starting to understand the effects of fast fashion, not just on the environment, but they can suss out that this is low quality merch. So having it be more investment. I spend a lot of time lurking on Reddit, and I see a lot of young people in there talking about cost per wear, which is a weird thing to imagine a 20-year-old talking about, right? So they are a very savvy bunch of buyers in this younger generation.
Yes, absolutely. It blows me away.
Yeah.
I remember I sometimes speak to some of the Gen Zers and I'm like, did I sound like this when I was 20? I don't think so.
I definitely didn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they're very aware that they're getting crap for $5 shirts. So they are responding, not all, but enough of them are responding to this message, sustainability, quality.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is a great driver that the public is finally demanding it, and I think that's going to be a big driver in that direction. We were just on with Avadi Safarian from RAP. He was talking a little bit about how the perception in the mind of the consumer is definitely much more there than it used to be.
Yeah,
so,
yay for that, right?
Yeah, I know it's happening slowly, but it's happening. Okay, another question here. I've created custom fashion for years, and it hasn't been as profitable as I would have liked. I find that it's a lot of work compared to mass selling. Any thoughts, especially in a small town compared to big cities?
Oh, well, you need to expand your footprint, sell it online. So you can sell tailored clothes online. So if you're small and local, you should definitely look at expanding it, and maybe with some higher end merch. As you saw, I don't know if this person was on at the beginning, there is a higher valuation. So people, particularly women, but even men, said that they believe the value of custom made clothes was 50 to 100% higher than a traditional clothes. Now, nobody's going to just throw their money in the streets, but they do believe it to be more valuable. So it is there. Maybe you need to go back and look at your pricing, and open up some categories that are more accessible and easier to fulfill online. There are some middle of the road models on custom too. So for example, there's a company called Red Thread out in California. They work with a model where they have the products like cut and like basically everything except the assembly overseas. So they're taking advantage of those lower labor rates there, and they have them shipped and done the final assembly done here in the US. So they're able to keep their prices kind of, medium for people. So that's another option. I think we have to get clever. And this is one of the frustrations I've had coming in as an outsider to the industry. There seems to be this wide chasm between the traditional tailoring universe and the internet upstarts like me and the Bonobos and the Indochinos of the world, right? We look at this problem in completely different ways. I do think that middle ground needs to happen. And we're starting to see more and more of that edging in. But I think both sides need to move a little bit, right? So on the traditional tailoring side, you need to look at making some automation, right? You need to look at being a little bit more internety, embracing some technology, maybe offering some lower price things that are more accessible for people. And on the internet only folks, step up your service models, because you're going to hurt the market, and you're going to hurt your brethren and sistren over the tailoring side if you're not providing a high level of service, or at least a higher level of service than you are right now. Because the way for this whole world to succeed is to be 3 steps above Amazon in quality and service, and still hit those customer expectations around pricing and delivering.
Agreed. Yeah, and to your point, I think one thing that's interesting when you notice these internet startup custom like Indochino, like you had mentioned, is that
Yeah.
it really does hinge on technology and being creative. There's other ways to be creative other than just in design. There's being creative in your supply chain, your sourcing strategies, your logistics, you know, and just tinkering with it and finding a blend of what works, what doesn't, what's most cost effective, you know, and what's more sustainable. So, you know, I think that's where the industry is headed. And I like your analogy to Amazon. I think Amazon, if you could, would be perceived as something like Target online. You know what I mean? But it has yet to replace they have apparel on there, and I've bought some stuff from there. I bought some stuff from Amazon apparel wise, but it doesn't have the same zeal as using something like Bonobos or one of these other ones. So
yeah, it just feels more special, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And,
well, and you can pivot into, there's new categories, right? So, for example, one of our providers, she was a couturier out of Bucharest. And obviously not selling a lot of prom dresses and wedding dresses this year. So she did a little pivot into custom made pajamas. She's just like, all right, I'm going to make pajamas. And she did. And, you know, that kind of saved her butt this year, is to be able to quickly pivot into something. So you just get clever. I think we get stuck in our own ways, and we think about only doing things a certain way. But there's a lot more happening out there right now.
Absolutely. And a good point to make is that as a virtual sourcing company, which we are transitioning to more and more, and that's kind of the bedrock of what we do at ATS, you know, I highly encourage our attendees to go to the link below the screen there and check out the exhibitor hall. If you don't find what you're looking for there, we do have a very talented matchmaking staff. So, you know, please contact one of them and they'll be able to point you in the right direction. What's really nice is that we have partnerships with a lot of the trade organizations and government agencies from different countries where these products are being produced. And there's also logistical services they can help you with. There's literally a plethora of information. If you don't know much about import, export, or doing business or sourcing in other countries, they can guide you through it at little to no cost, usually generally no cost. Their whole initiative is to increase commerce and business in their regions. So they're there for you as a resource. I have a few more questions here. Seems like custom means it would cost more. How much more in general? This is from Jessica.
Well, Jessica, as we saw, the customers expected to be anywhere from 50 to 100% higher than a standard mass manufactured. So if you can price it below that, then you're gonna make some people surprised, actually. One of the ways we've achieved that, by the way, is by not doing a traditional retail model. So we are a true marketplace. So we're actually a lot more like Amazon than a retailer. We take a commission instead of doing a wholesale retail markup. So what that allows us to do then is give the bulk of the money directly to the provider so they can use better quality fabrics, textiles, and finishes. They can pay their people better. It's, you know, we believe it's more ethical to support it that way. And then on the flip side of that, it allows us then to offer custom clothes at a surprisingly low price. The margins are pretty thin on that. And so you have to do a lot. You have to do a lot of volume, just like Amazon. They weren't profitable for 10 years, right? I'm hoping we'll get there faster, but you do have to make it up in volume, and you have to look at, you know, other ways. You know, I like the person who said that they were thinking about a subscription service, stuff like that. There are other ways, as we look out there at the myriad business models in fashion, there are other ways to make money than just a standard wholesale to resale, retail markup, and a standard approach to transactional purchasing. So you could, for example, bundle in having a professional style consultant or hair, you know, makeup, whatever. There are other things that are parallel and complementary to be able to create value in these bundles, right? For pricing, though, I've seen our suits are all over the place. So we have suits from one of our partners is Sumisura, and they do really nice, good quality suits, and they're in the like high 200s to, I think their highest end one I've seen is around in the high 500s. But then we also work with bespoke tailors out of one of our finest tailor is in London. He's an Italian couturier, and his prices are much more what you'd expect for a bespoke suit. They're made of Italian linen or Italian wool, and they're about $2,500 a suit. So that's probably more in line with what you would expect from a European or an American tailor.
And we do have one more question here. Because custom items are made to order and requires a bigger commitment for customers, do you find that people are more hesitant to purchase custom things for everyday, custom for
Yes.
everyday things?
Yes, absolutely. They have to get over that first hurdle, right? They have to get over that first, oh God, I can't return it, that kind of thing. So actually one of the ways that we are countering this is by having a consistent returns policy. So it's not a returns per se, but we'll cover alterations. And if it needs to be remade, we'll remake it for them at no additional cost. So you do have to build that into your model, because that's what everybody's done, right? Again, going back to Amazon, I hate to keep harping at Amazon, but damn it, they're doing it right. So there are things to be learned there. So building in all those extras into the base price that cover shipping, that cover returns, building that in, yes, that does bring up the overall price. But American consumers in particular are kind of used to that. They expect it. They're like, I'll pay more if you don't charge me shipping. They know it's in there, but they allow themselves to play these mental games. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, no, I think it did. And I love the way you articulate things. It's very easy to digest. So thank you. Okay, I think that will do it for our questions. Let me just check to see if anyone from Facebook. I do not see any. Okay. I thank you so much again, Dan. That was amazing. I certainly learned a little bit as well, actually quite a bit. So thank you for being here. I look
I'm
forward to having you
glad.
again someday. Yeah.
And just a reminder.
No, please. Ladies first.
Those who
Always.
didn't see the end of the presentation, we do have that white paper coming out later this week, which has some of this research and a lot more industry looking at the back end manufacturing and the consumer side of things. So please feel free to write me for a free copy of that.
Right. I might even myself. Thank you again, everybody. A quick reminder, we do have what's called our Zoom room, link in the chat. It is taking the place of our show floor. So we have our speakers, our partners, and some of our administrative staff and other attendees floating in and out of there. So please go ahead and visit that at your leisure. And this will conclude our seminar series for the day. We will resume again tomorrow. Thank you again for all of your insight and knowledge. Bye, everybody.